So when the direct rule of the Britishers was established, then the exploitation of Indians was at maximum, and just because of that, national movement will start somewhere around 1885 and that will continue till 1947. Then in 1613, Sir Thomas Roe came as an envoy of the British Crown in the court, again in the court of the Jahangir. The revolt of 1857 was started. This was your 10th May 1857 in Meerut. Now, Sir Ma'am, in between there are two major developments also that had taken place. That is called Gandhian regional movements, Champaran, Ahmedabad and the Khera. Then we see the emergence of socialist ideology in the Congress and this Subhash Chandra Bose activity. Now there is one more thing that we need to understand, that is the growth of the communalism and finally the partition of India in 1947. So see what we are going to do here, right here. We will start from the scratch itself. You can join this Telegram group, the official Telegram group of mine. So you can join me here. So see here. We will start from what we are going to do in the next 1.5 hour. We will start with the arrival of the Europeans. Arrival of the Europeans. Arrival of the Europeans in India. Europeans in India. Arrival of the Europeans in India. If you look here, then first of all, the Portuguese will come. Portuguese, then Dutch, then Danes, then English, and then your French came to India. But in India, the most important European powers were English and the French. English and the French. English means Britishers and French. And just in the process of establishing their hegemony in India, political hegemony in India, there will be a battle, and these battles are known as the Carnatic War in India. Carnatic Wars in India. Altogether, 3 Carnatic Wars were fought, and ultimately in this battle, British will defeat the French. And after these battles, among all the European powers, British will establish its supremacy in India. British will establish its supremacy in India, or English will establish its supremacy in India. So we will have to study about the history of the Britishers in India. We have to focus the history of the Britishers in India primarily, right? So then we will try to understand. After this, we will try to understand the political control and establishment of political control, establishment and political control of the Britishers in India. Britishers in India. Then we will also try to understand their relationship with the Indians. Then we will also try to understand the relationship of the Britishers, relationship of the Britishers in India. Initially, their relation was of initially Britishers were submissive to the Indians, but they were very opportunist. But these Europeans were, the Britishers were very opportunist, and they're waiting for their right time. With the decline of the great Mughals, they will emerge in their political ambitions, or political aspirations, right? Are you getting me? So this is a very important thing that you should understand, right, Sister Madam? So first, we need to understand the arrival of the Europeans. Then we will try to understand, out of all these European powers who will establish its hegemony in India, So Britishers or English will establish their hegemony. When they were establishing their political hegemony in India, then we need to understand their relationship with the Indians. Initially, their relationship was of very submissive. They were very much submissive to the Indians. But with the decline of the Mughals, now they will rose into their political aspirations and they will try to establish their political control in India. They were not merely a trader, but they were also what? They had their own political ambitions to cater their colonial interest, right? So when we are trying to understand their political aspirations, then there are certain battles and the wars that we need to focus here. So they will start their political control from Bengal, from Bengal. This is your Bengal. And in Bengal, there is a battle that is called Battle of Plassey. This battle is considered as one of the decisive battles that was fought ever in India, because this battle had established East India Company as a political power in India. Initially, it was just a trading company, but after this battle, East India Company established itself as a political power in India. So we will try to understand the political power in the Battle of the Plassey and so on and so forth, right? Then we need to understand after 1757 till 1857, this is the period of 100 years, where the Britishers, or simply we can say the East India Company, had established a system of exploitation by different means, and that will culminate finally, just because of this exploitation, that will culminate into the Revolt of 1857. This is again a very landmark year that we need to understand. After this revolt, East India Company, the power of East India Company will be transferred to the crown, and Indians became directly the subject of the crown. And then under the rule of the crown, that is called under the British rule or direct rule, this was the indirect rule. So 1757 to 1857, 1757 to 1857 was the indirect rule of the Britishers, indirect rule of the Britishers. And after 1857, direct rule of the Britishers will establish. Direct rule of the Britishers was established. That will continue till independence. That is 1947. That was 1947, right? So when the direct rule of the East India of the Britishers was established, then the exploitation of Indians was at maximum, and just because of that, national movement will start somewhere around 1885, and that will continue till 1947 with the variant trends of the nationalist movement. So we need to understand the entire modern history into this perspective. Let's start now. Let's continue with the session. So here, see here. So see, Europeans, if I talk about the Europeans that arrived in India primarily as the traders, they were primarily as the traders. And the order of the arrival of the Europeans in India are the Portuguese, they came first in India, that is 1498, then the Dutch, that is in 1602, then English in 1608, and then Danes in 1616, and then your French 1664. So this is the sequence of the Europeans who came to India, as I told you. So that is very much important that you directly may get a question on this sequence, who came first and who came last, right? So Portuguese, the Europeans started coming to India with the Portuguese, and till French they came to India. So Vasco da Gama was the first Portuguese who came to India. Vasco da Gama, when he went for the voyages, he came up to the Eastern Africa. On the Eastern African coast, he met with a Gujarati trader whose name was Abdul Mazid, and this Abdul Mazid became his pilot and navigated him till the Calicut, that is in South India, that is in the Kerala. And on 20th May 1498, Vasco da Gama came to India. And in course of the time, Portuguese established their first factory in the Cochin. So first factory at the Cochin. What happened during this period? Actually, when Vasco da Gama came to India, then he returned with some of the goods that he had taken from India and then sold it off in the European market and made 60% profit, 60 times profit on that product. So it attracted all the Europeans to come to India. So again, the Portuguese will come. Again, the other Europeans will also come to India, right? And Portuguese will come and will establish their first factory in the Cochin. So that is an important fact that you should take care of. So that is an important fact, right? Later, they colonized parts of South America also, America, especially Brazil I'm talking about, and later shifted their attention there, right? So when Portuguese came to India, their interest was just to maximize their profit, and they, in fact, they made it. But gradually, their interest was shifted to Brazil, and that's why they lost their control in India, although they continued here till 1961. In fact, Portuguese were the first and the last to come and to leave India, right? But their dominance was lost after some time, and that because their focus was more into the Latin countries or the South American countries, that is your Brazil, and that's why they could not become a dominant power in the days to come in India. They colonized parts of South America, Brazil, and later shifted attention there. Portuguese were the last Europeans to leave India. India launched Operation Vizay to integrate the Portuguese territories of Goa, Daman, Diu in 1961. So by this operation is also important. By Operation Vizay, India got or established its control over the Portuguese territories in India, and these territories were Goa, Daman and the Diu in 1961. So that is also important fact, sir, madam. Now coming to the another important European company or European, that is called the Dutch. Dutch East India Company established a factory at Masulipatam in 1605. But their interest was more into Southeast Asian colonies, not in India. So they also could not become a dominant European power in India, right? Right. So this was Dutch East India Company established their first factory in Masulipatam in 1605, right? But their focus was in Southeast Asian countries. Now what will happen? Now we have come to discuss about the British East India Company. This British East India Company will surpass all the European powers in India. And in the Battle of Beidra, the Britishers had decisively defeated the Dutch. That ended the Dutch dominance or influence on the Indian trader. So that is an important battle that was fought in 1759. So that is again an important factor, right? Now coming to the other thing. So rise of the British East India Company. As you know that it was the Britishers who had established its supremacy over all the Europeans. So we need to understand the history of the European and the Britishers in detail. British East India Company was established in December 1599, and it got the charter in 1600. And in 1608, British East India Company established its first. In 1608, the Captain Hawkins came in the court of the Jahangir, and later on, the another Britishers who came to the court of the Jahangir, it was Sir Thomas Roe. There is one more important thing here. Actually, Captain Hawkins came in the court of the Jahangir as the representative of the East India Company, but Sir Thomas Roe came as an envoy. Actually, he was the representative of the Crown of the England who visited the court of Jahangir. So these are two important facts that you should take care of, right? So East India Company's representative was Captain Hawkins, and then Sir Thomas Roe came to the court of Jahangir as the representative of the East India Company. Although when the Captain Hawkins came to India, came in the court of the Jahangir, could not get much trade concessions. It was only the Sir Thomas Roe who had won some considerable trade benefits and the privileges from the Jahangir. So we need to understand this also. In 1608, Captain Hawkins came in the court of the Jahangir, and in 1609, as the representative of the East India Company. After him, Sir Thomas Roe came in his court. Sir Thomas Roe came in his court. Sir Thomas Roe came in his court. Sir Thomas Roe came in his court as the British envoy. So that is an important thing that you should take care of. Representative of East India Company and Sir Thomas Roe as the representative of the British Crown, right? Now, after Sir Thomas Roe, Jahangir issued a royal charter. Royal charter. What do you mean by royal charter or the royal decree? Charter is something like called the order. So just issued a decree in 1613 that allowed British to establish a factory in Surat. What do you mean by the factory? Factory was not supposed to be any production house at this time. Actually, it was named after an official that is called the factor. And this factory were actually the warehouse where the goods were kept for the trading purposes, for the export and the import, right? So it was actually the warehouse of the Europeans, So the first factory of the East India Company was established in Surat. And by 1619, British factories were established in different parts of the country like Ahmedabad, Bharuch, Baroda, and of course, Agra, and so on and so forth, right? The British built Fort St. George in Madras. So that is an important fort, right? So see, what actually I want to say you, so Sama, see here. Britishers had established their dominance in the three regions. The reason number one, that is called this is your Bengal. Then they will also establish their control in Madras, right? And then they also established their control in Bombay. So these were three important centers of the Britishers in India. So Britishers had three important centers in India. One was your Bengal, other one was your Bombay, and other one was your Madras. So we need to understand how and when they have established their control in the Madras, how they have established their control in the Bombay, and how they have established their control in the Bengal. So that is an important aspect, and we can expect the question right from here, right? So as far as the Madras is concerned, Britishers had established a strong fort over here that is called St. George Fort in Madras. St. Fort George in Madras, right? So this was your St. Fort George in Madras. St. George Fort in Madras. Right? And later on, this Madras developed at presidency town of the East India Company. Now, how the Britishers got the Bombay in 1661. Actually, the British prince was married to a Portuguese princess, Catherine Briganza. So this Bombay was given to the Britishers as the dowry. So Portuguese gave Bombay to the Britishers in dowry, as dowry. So they got Bombay here, right? Are you getting my points? So that is an important aspect. When we come to the Bengal, then in Bengal, after the Battle of Plassey, Bengal was under the direct control. The Bengal was under the control of the Britishers, and Britishers had established St. William Fort, or the William Fort, St. William Fort here, over here, right? So William Fort. There are two important forts. One is your St. George Fort, then is your William Fort in Bengal. So these were the three important centers. So all the three were later on the presidencies of East India Company: the Bengal, Madras, and the Bombay. So Bengal, this is called your Calcutta, will develop as Calcutta. Then this Madras was Madras, and this Bombay. So all these three were the presidencies of, or the important centers of, the East India Company, So Fort St. George and then this. In 1661, in 1661, Britishers got Bombay as dowry from the Portuguese when the British prince married to the Catherine Brigantia, the princess of the Portuguese. So this was our discussion here. Initially, their focus was they focused on trade and the profit. As I told you, initially their interest was only in the trade and the profit. The East India Company gradually became involved in the political affairs, especially with the decline of the great Mughals. So again, taking you back to this slide. So see, we can understand the position of the Britishers. Britishers came to India in 1608. 1608. So simply we can write here 1608, and before this, East India Company was established. It was established in 1600 or 1519. So East India Company got established. East India Company was established. Then in 1618, Captain Hawkins came to India. And then in 1613, Sir Thomas Roe came to India. Sir Thomas Roe came to India. If I talk till 1707, this was the year of the death of Aurangzeb, right? So more or less during this period, East India Company, East India Company was submissive, was very submissive to the Indians. They were very much submissive during this period. East India Company was more or less submissive to the Indian powers. Submissive to the Indian powers. But after the death of Aurangzeb, if I talk about after the death of the Aurangzeb, their political ambitions grew. Political ambitions of East India Company grew. After this, political ambitions of East India Company grew. Political aspirations or ambitions of East India Company was at high now, and it was fulfilled in 1757 when the Battle of Plassey was fought. And after this battle, East India Company became a political power, in India. And then they have established 100 years regime of exploitation. And they have established 100 years of regime of exploitation. 1857. So this was a period of exploitation. This was the era of exploitation by the East India Company. Is it okay? And it was the indirect rule. Rule of the Britishers in India, because it was not the government but a company of the Britishers in India. But a company was ruling in India, right? And in 1857, the Great Mutiny, the Great Revolt, Great Revolt or Sepoy Revolt, Great Revolt took place. Is it okay? Is that fine? Are you getting my point? So 1608, East India Company was established. Then 1608, Captain Hawkins, as a representative of East India Company, came to India. And then in 1613, Sir Thomas Roe came as an envoy of the British Crown in the court of the Jahangir, right? So after this, Sir Thomas Roe, Britishers got some kind of the concessions, some trade privileges, and they got the right to establish a temporary factory in the Surat, right? And with this, they started their career, the economic career in India actually, and actually in India, right? So till the death of the Aurangzeb, they were more or less, they were very submissive. They did not rose into their political ambitions like the Portuguese. Actually, Portuguese were very much aggressive in their approaches, but not the Britishers. They were waiting for their right time to establish their political control in India. So during this period, they were focusing more over their trade maximization or profit maximization, right? So this was this period, just please mind it. But after the death of the Aurangzeb, this was the death of the last great Mughal ruler. Their political aspirations now rose into the power, and they realized it actually in 1757 after the Battle of Plassey in India, right? So what I was discussing right over here, Sir Madam. So see here, Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb opposed the company in 1686, but a compromise was rescheduled in 1690 through Job Charnock, who founded the settlement of the Sultanate. So see what actually happened. Initially, they were focusing over the trade and the profit. East India Company gradually involved in the political affairs, and they got substantial trade privileges in India by the Mughals and some local rulers as well, right? But their political ambition was political ambitions were actually crystallizing. So now they were also against the Mughals also. Whenever they got the opportunity, they also went against the interest of the Mughals. But since the Mughals were in a very formidable condition, so they suppressed their any such kind of the activities. So Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb opposed the companies in 1687, but a compromise was reached again in 1690 through Job Charnock, who founded the settlement of the Sultanate, that is in Calcutta, right? So see, actually there was a condition in Calcutta, the Britishers were trying to get maximum profit. So they were doing some anti-Mughal activities. So Aurangzeb had punished the East India Company, but again there was a policy of the pardon that was made by the Britishers before the Aurangzeb, and again restored their privileges, trade privileges in India. And this was the Job Charnock right over here. Job Charnock was a person who had established the town of the Calcutta, starting with the Sultanate. In 1698, Bengal's Subedar Azim-ud-Daula, this name is again important, Bengal's Nawab, Azim-ud-Daula granted the company three villages, Sultanate, Calicut and Govindpur. So there were three: Sultanate, Govindpur and Calicut. Kolikata, right? So all this, Sultanate, Govindpur and Calicut, right? So in 1698, Bengal Subedar Azim-ud-Daula, that is an important name, had granted the company the three villages that became the foundation of the Kolkata, Sultanate, Govindpur and the Kolikata. And after Aurangzeb's death in 1787, the weakening Mughal Empire allowed the company to expand their, in fact, influence. This was their political influence in India, right? Now, during the time of the later Mughals, there is one important king whose name is Farrukhsiyar. In 1717, he had granted a charter to the East India Company. This charter is considered as the Golden Farman. Why this is considered the Golden Farman and why Farrukhsiyar had given this charter to the East India Company? Actually, it is said that Farrukhsiyar was ill. He had some kind of a wound on the back of his body, right? And it was treated by a British surgeon whose name was Hamilton. Being obliged by these Britishers, he had granted this charter to the East India Company, and this charter is considered as the Golden Farman. What is golden? It is considered as the Golden Farman or the Magna Carta to the Britishers. Why? Because this Golden Farman had granted duty-free trade right to East India Company in Bengal, right? Are you getting my points? So in 1717, William Hamilton successfully treated the Mughal Emperor Farrukhsiyar's illness and secured a farman that allowed the company duty-free trade in Bengal for an annual payment of 3,000 rupees only, right? This farman is called the Magna Carta of the British rule in India, but is also considered a major blunder by the Farrukhsiyar, because under this farman, Under this Farman, if you go by this Farman, what was the provision of this Farman? Farman of 1717. Farman of 1717. East India Company was exempted. East India Company was exempted. Exempted to pay tax or duty, taxes for its trade, right? For its trade, right? Are you getting me? Under this Farman, they have the right to issue dastak. East India Company's authority, East India's companies, East India Company authorities were entitled to issue a dastak. And this dastak was nothing but this is called your free trade pass. So this dastak was supposed to be, it was supposed to be passed for the trade-off of East India Company only. But later on, this dastak was misused. Later on, this dastak was misused. How this was misused? Actually, how this was misused. When I'm talking about the misuse of this dastak, how it was misused. Actually, this was used for the private trade, used for the private trade of the officials of East India Company. So this was one of the misuses. And other misuse was this dastak was sold. This dastak was also sold. This dastak was also sold to Indian merchants to trade. So this was the case of exemption of the taxes by these Indian traders, by the officials of the East India Company. Actually, this dastak was given only for the trade of the East India Company. But what happened later on, this dastak was misused by the authorities of the East India Company for their private trades. And they also sold it to their Indian friends also at the subsidized cost. Suppose if a trader had to pay 100 rupees to the government of the Bengal for their trade, now they could purchase this pass or the dastak at the cost of 75 rupees or 60 rupees or the 50 rupees, so that they could save 50 rupees. Here they could save 40 rupees or 25 rupees, right? So they were purchasing these dastaks for the free trade, right? So you can understand this was the loss of the revenue of the Bengal government when it was being misused by selling it to the Indian friends or the friend traders. Is it okay? So ultimately it became the cause of the conflict between the Bengal government and the East India Company that ultimately led to the perpetuation of revolt, Battle of Plassey in 1757. So it later led to the conflicts with the Nawab of Bengal, culminating in the Battle of Plassey in 1757. Are you getting my points? So it was a thing, so madam. Now coming the other parts. Rise of the British East India Company. Say, when we are talking about the sequence of the arrival of the Europeans into India, in that series, French power was the last one to come to India. Now, let me discuss a little bit about the nature of the East India Company. Unlike the British East India Company, French East India Company was a government company because it was established by one of the ministers of the Louis XIV of the France, and this was Colbert, right? So it was the government company. It was a public sector company. Is it okay? Is it okay? This was established in 1668 and French established their first factory in Surat again. Is it okay? So French East India Company was French East India Company was a government company, unlike British East India Company, So this is the one thing, sirs and madam. Now what will happen, sirs and madam? In 1668, when the French East India Company was established and they came for the trade into India, they established their first settlement of the first factory in Surat. Like the British, the French became involved in the Indian political affairs and led to the three Anglo-French war that is popularly known as the Carnatic War, right? Now, again, I'm taking you to the map. See here. Actually, if I talk about the globally, if I talk in the global terms, globally, among the European powers, Europeans, there were the two powers. One was the Britishers, and other one was the French power, right? French power. So one was your Britisher, another was your French power. In around 14th and 15th century, if I talk 14th, 15th century, there were certain developments had taken place in Europe. And these developments were, you can name them, that is called Renaissance. Then there was geographical discoveries. Then we can talk about the Enlightenment, Reformism, etc. Right? So just because of Renaissance, geographical discoveries, Enlightenment, scientific inventions, etc. So now inventions, just because of all these developments, now the Europeans were coming out of the Europe for the sake of making their colonies, because during this time there was the mercantilist idea that was prevailing in Europe. Mercantilist idea. And what was the objective of the mercantilist idea? To maximize the profit. Then again in the mid of the 15th century, there was the fall of Constantinople. So they were looking for some alternative route to establish their trade relation with the Eastern world, right? That's why that led to the geographical discovery. So in the development of all these things, Renaissance, geographical discoveries, Enlightenment, scientific inventions, and mercantilist idea, now Europeans were coming out of the European continent for the sake of what that is called colonialism, and later on for the imperialism. In this process, the Britishers and the French, they were the two important powers. They were now conflicting, or they were struggling with each other, not only in Europe, but also in America and also in Africa, in some parts of the Africa, Northern Africa especially, and then in Asian continent as well. So now, actually, they were in globally, there was a two powers that is called the Britishers and and the French were at war at many of the places. Britishers and French were at wars at many of the places, globally, right? And one such war was, Sir Madam, that is your globally. And one such war was 7 Years' War, war that was fought in 1756 to 63. I would like to say, before the First World War, 7 Year was actually the First World War in India, just because of its spread and the engagement of the country and the people in the war. So 7 Years' War by some of the scholars is considered as the actual First World War before the 1914 till the 1918. The First World War was fought from 1914 to 1918 just because of their spread. 7 Years' War, their spread into the different geography and the engagement of the people in the different continent. Some of the historians or the scholars says that the 7 Years' War was actually the First World War. So you can understand the intensity of the struggle and the conflict between the Britishers and the French East India Company even before the 7 Years' War. That culminated into the 7 Years' War in 1756 that continued till 1763. Right? Are you getting my points? So wherever the colonies of the Britain and the France was spread or established across the globe, they were also conflicting all the time. If there are any development that had taken place between these two powers, Britain and the France, in Europe, it also impacted their colonies across the globe. Is it fine? And in this context, we can understand the three kinetic wars in India. The first kinetic war was the extension of the European conflict between the Britishers and the French that culminated again by the European treaty that is called Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle, right? So first kinetic war was fought from 1746 to 1748 just because of the European development between the two countries, France and the Britain. Then second kinetic war that was fought from 1749 to 1754. It was for the Indian regions that was concluded by the Treaty of Pondicherry. So this was concluded by the Treaty of Pondicherry. Treaty of Pondicherry, right? Pondicherry. So this war was started by European regions, by the European region or for the European regions, and the second battle was fought. This was fought for Indian regions, sir and madam. Now coming to the third war between the France and the British power, French and the British power in India. In fact, it was the extension of the 7 Years' War that I was talking about, that also fought from 1756 to 1763. It again started with the European factors in India, right? But anyways, during this battle, 7 Years' War, important battles were fought between the Britishers and the French power in India, and one such conflict or the battle was Battle of Bandivas, that was fought in 1760. This is considered as one of the decisive battles again fought in India, because in this battle, Britishers had decisively defeated the French from the Indian soil, right, and captured one of the stronghold of the French, Pondicherry, in 1761. And after this battle, East India Company, that is called the British East India Company, emerged as the dominant European power in India. So it had established by 1760 or 1761 as the most dominating European powers in India. So now we can understand the supremacy, how the supremacy of East India Company was established in India after siding all the European powers. Is it okay? Now let me discuss another important episode, and that episode is in Bengal. Battle of Plassey and the British political control. Actually, the Battle of Plassey was, as I told you, it was the decisive battle fought in India, because this battle had transformed the East India Company from a trading entity to the political entity. So let me discuss about this battle also. Battle of Plassey and the British political control. Right, sir and madam? Now, see here. See, the Battle of Plassey was fought between the Nawab Siraj-ud-Dawla. It was fought between the Nawab of Bengal, that is called Siraj-ud-Dawla, and East India Company. In this battle, East India Company was led by one of its competent officials, whose name was Robert Clive. He was a very meritorious man. Actually, he had joined this India Company as in the capacity of the clerk, but just because of his merit and the talent, he rose to the power of office of the governor. But anyways, so Battle of the Plassey was fought between the Nawab of Bengal, Siraj-ud-Dawla, and East India Company, which was led by a competent British official whose name was Robert Clive. won the battle through conspiracies. In this battle, actually, Siraj-Dowlah had a huge army, and it was almost impossible for the British East India Company to defeat such a big power without any conspiracy. So Robert Clive in this battle had taken the course of the conspiracy. He has the conspiracy, and he had in fact shifted the loyalty of the companions of the Nawab of the Bengal towards the East India Company by giving them what I say the false promises, right? So just because of the conspiracy, East India Company had claimed its victory in this battle. That battle is known as Battle of Plassey. Post Plassey, what will happen? A process of economic exploitation was started of Indians, intensified along with the interference in the religions and the custom. I'm going to discuss something, Sir and Madam. See, so this was your Bengal. Let me discuss. So this was your Bengal, Sir and Madam. This was your Bengal. Is it okay? Bengal. Is it okay? And at this time, India was considered as the golden sparrow. India was considered as the golden sparrow. India was the golden sparrow. India was considered as a golden sparrow. Golden sparrow. Golden sparrow, right? Golden sparrow. And the heart of this golden sparrow was Bengal. Heart of the golden sparrow. Golden sparrow was Bengal, just because of its prosperity. Right? So from quite a long period of the time, British East India Company was eyeing to the Bengal, and they got the opportunity by the Battle of the 1757, right? So 1757, by 1757, Battle of Plassey. East India Company established as a political power. East India Company was established as a political power. Is it okay? As a political power. After becoming the political power, their main interest was maximization, or satisfying their economic greed. Satisfying their economic greed. And this greed led to the economic exploitation of India. This greed led to the economic exploitation of India. How this exploitation was done, sir and madam. This economic exploitation was done through the revenue settlements. Is it okay? Done through revenue settlements. Done through revenue settlement. And three important settlements were made. And these settlements were permanent settlement, Rivalry settlement, and Mahalwari settlement. This was your permanent settlement. Then there was your Rivalry settlement, and then there was your Mahalwari settlement. Mahalwari settlement. Is it okay? Mahalwari settlement. So these were the settlements. Under these settlements, there was a clause. There was a clause, and this clause was sunset clause. Sunset clause. Sunset clause. What was the sunset clause? Actually, sir and ma'am, under this clause, there was a provision that on the sunset of a particular day, the peasants or the landlords had to deposit their revenue. If they would not have deposited their revenue, the land was confiscated, and it was in the bidding now in the market, right? So this was the clause that had exploited the Indians, not only exploited the Indians, but also put them into a vicious circle of the indebtedness. How they were put into the vicious circle of the indebtedness? Because money lender were established. The demand of the revenue was in the cash. Let me discuss all these things, sir and madam. See, actually, from the land, this is your land, sir and madam, and revenue was to be paid. Revenue was to be paid in cash. Was to be paid in cash, not in the kind. Now what will happen? Now if the peasants or the landlords had to deposit the revenue, under the sunset law, revenue under the sunset clause, what will happen? The peasants or the cultivators and the landlords will approach to the money lenders. And what these money lenders? For cash to be deposited as revenue. So what will happen? Now this money lender will charge high rate of taxation, charged high rate of interest. So now just because of this high rate of interest, high rate of interest, are you getting my points? What will happen? Now the cultivators will have to keep his goods, land, property, cattle, everything as mortgage to the money lenders, and gradually these mortgage properties were confiscated by these money lenders, and the peasants were into the in a vicious cycle of the indebtedness. Are you getting my points? So the exploitation of the cultivators and the peasants were at high under these settlements, and this was actually growing, making the profit size of the East India Company more and more, right? So what will happen after the Battle of the Plassey? It was the East India Company who became the political power, and they had started exploiting India to the maximum, right, Sasana? And that's why you have this line is here: post Plassey, economic exploitation of Indians intensified along with the interference in the religion and the custom. So this is the one aspect. Indian intensified. Economic exploitation of the Indians was intensified. This is the one aspect. That was through the different system of the land revenue. That is a permanent Rivalry settlement, the Mahalwari settlement. Now the religion and the custom. What was the religion and the custom? Actually, Britishers now introduced by the second decade of the 19th century, by 1813, they have introduced the Anglican policy in India. And they started converting the people into the Christianity so that they could be developed as the customer of the manufactured goods of the British industries, right? If they will be cultured into the Christianity, if they will behave like the Britishers, so obviously they will consume the British good that was being manufactured in Britain, and they will not be the customers of the Indian products. Are you getting my points? So in the post-Plassey, economic exploitation of the Indians intensified along with interference in their religion and the custom. Is it okay? Is it fine? Now, coming to some other aspect, just what will happen, just because of these exploitations, such kind of exploitation, several rebellions followed, including this revolt like Sannyasi revolt in Bengal. In Maharashtra, there was a Ramosi revolt. In Jharkhand, today's Jharkhand, this is called Santhal rebellion, and finally it culminated into the revolt of 1857. In 1857. But before that, there were some other factors also that was responsible for the outbreak of the Great Revolt of 1857. The Britishers, like Lord Dalhousie, they had introduced a very insane practice of, or the policy of, the annexation of the Indian territories, like the doctrine of lapse. Under this policy, Dalhousie had annexed many of the states of India immorally. Like the first state which was under this policy, which was annexed, was Satara in 1848, then Jodhpur and Sambhal in 1849, Udaipur in 1852, and Jhansi in 1853. Even loyal ones like Awadh, on the name of misgovernance, fueling resentment, right? Is it okay, Salsan ma'am? So what was the policy of doctrine of lapse? Let me discuss this also. See, doctrine of lapse. If I talk about the doctrine of lapse, under this policy, British had to recognize the higher of a princely state, to be the next king, to be the next king, right? Next king. In case of adoption, suppose there is a king and the queen, and they had no natural heir, so they would have been gone for adoption. So if there is any child which is adopted, generally, in case of adoption, generally, British East India Company did not recognize them, and annexed the princely estate. So this was what the policy of princely estate. So this was the direct annexation of the princely estates under this policy. Again, you will be surprised to know that there was a state that is called Awadh. Awadh was a state, and this state was friendly. It was a friendly state of the East India Company, But even this state was annexed. Even this state was annexed on the name of misgovernance. Misgovernance. So it can directly be your question in your prelims that which of the following princely states was annexed on the name of misgovernance, and this was your Awadh. Now again, there are something that is the first state that was annexed under the doctrine of lapse. This was your Satara, that is again a question. Then your Jodhpur and Sambhalpur, then is Udaipur and Jhansi in 1853. So this is the sequence of the annexation of the princely states under the doctrine of lapse. And Awadh was annexed on the name of the misgovernance. So that is again an important factor that fueled the resentments, right? Are you getting my points? So now you could understand the socio-economic and the political factors responsible for the outbreak of the revolt of 1857, right? 1857. So revolt of 1857. So the first war of Indian independence. See, we understood the social factor, the economic factor, and the political factor for the outbreak of the revolt of 1857, right? But there was some immediate factor also that was responsible for the outbreak of the revolt of 1857. Actually, recently in 1857, just before the 1857 revolt, a rifle was introduced in the British Army, and that rifle was your Enfield rifle, and it is said that the cartridge of this rifle was to be unpinned by your mouth, and when you are going to unpin this cartridge from your mouth, be you Hindu or you are a Muslim, your religion would be polluted, because there was a rumor, and the rumor was that this cartridge was grazing with either by the fat of cow, which was very sacred for the Britishers, or by the fat of the pig, which was not acceptable by the Muslims. So it instigated a religious resentment against this cartridge among both the community, Hindu and the Muslims, right? So beside the socio-economic and the political causes, the immediate cause of the revolt of 1857 was the use of cartridge greased with cow and the pig fat was offensive to Hindu and the Muslim soldiers respectively. So this was very much offensive. So what will happen? Obviously, it will be expressed, it will be resented by some of the soldiers. On 29th March 1857, there was a soldier in the Barakpur in Calcutta, whose name was Mangal Pandey. Mangal Pandey just refused to use these cartridges just because of this rumor, and he was punished and he was executed. Now the message of the execution of this Mangal Pandey was spread to across the country, to the various part of the country, and it was felt strongly in Meerut, that is today in Uttar Pradesh, that is in western Uttar Pradesh. The Sepoys of the Meerut on 10th May 1857 officially initiated or officially started the revolt of 1857. So there are two things, sirs and madam. On 29th March 1857, Barakpur cantonment, a brave soldier Mangal Pandey refused to use this cartridge and attacked officers. That has sparked the Indian Rebellion of 1857. And finally, the mutiny began on 10th May 1857. So that date is again important. When the revolt of 1857 was started, this was your 10th May 1857 in Meerut. And now it will spread to the different parts of the country, in Delhi, then in Kanpur, in Lucknow, till Bihar, right, sir and madam? So see, what is the masses? So in Bengal on 20th March, that is called Barakpur, okay, 29th March 1857, the event of the refusal of the use of the cartridge of the Enfield rifle was experienced over here. Then Mangal Pandey had attacked on his officers. Then he was executed. Then this masses reached to the western UP, in western UP. And in western UP, that is in Meerut, on 10th May 1857, the revolt was started. Right? And then it will spread to, Delhi, then it came to Lucknow, then to Delhi, then Kanpur, then Lucknow, Jhansi, Bihar. So it is spread to the many parts of the country: Delhi, Kanpur, Jhansi, Bihar, Bareilly, etc. So there are too many places where this revolt was now spread, starting with the Meerut, that is in the western UP. Now Delhi, Kanpur, Lucknow, Jhansi and Bihar. In Delhi, there was the last Mughal Badshah, whose name was Bahadur Shah Zafar, or Bahadur Shah II. Bahadur Shah II, also known as Bahadur Shah Zafar. Bahadur Shah Zafar. Right? Zafar. Bahadur Shah Zafar. Actually, Bahadur Shah used to write poems Bahadur Shah used to write poems, used to write poems, under the pen name of Zafar. Pen name of Zafar. That's why he is also known as Zafar. Zafar, right? So Bahadur Shah second, or the Bahadur Shah Zafar, was the last Mughal ruler who was in Delhi. The soldiers had given him the responsibility to lead this revolt in 1857, right? So he became the symbolic leader of the revolt of 1857 from Delhi. Is it okay? Now, so madam. So now what will happen? And finally, the mutiny began on the 10th May 1857 in Meerut and is spreading to Delhi, where Bahadur Shah Zafar was declared the emperor of India. Further, it spread to Kanpur, and it was led by Nana Sahab and Tatya Tope. Begum Hazrat Mahal led this revolt in Lucknow. Then Rani Lakshmi Bai fought bravely in the Jhansi and sacrificed her life. Babu Kumar Singh had led this revolt in Bihar. The revolt was widespread in northern India, but not in South India and the Punjab. That is an important factor, right? The impact of this revolt was limited to the northern India, and it was not felt in Punjab and in the South India. So this was one of the limitations of this revolt as well. Even princely states remained loyal to the Britishers during revolt of 1857. But ultimately, this revolt of 1857, although it was very massive and it was very strong, but it declined. It became a failure. Why? There were certain reasons. The reason was there was a lack of the leadership and the planning. So there was the lack of, just because of the lack of the leadership and the planning contributed to its suppression by the British forces. Bahadur Shah Zafar surrendered on 20th September 1857, and his sons were also executed, and he was exiled to Rangoon, where he died. And just because of this, without any proper planning and without any leadership, this revolt was a failure and finally suppressed. Other leaders like Begum Hazrat Mahal, Kunwar Singh, and Maulvi Ahmadullah of Bareilly were defeated or killed. V.D. Savarkar later called this revolt as the first war of Indian independence. Right? So this is how we came to the revolt of 1857. What happened after the revolt of 1857? So that is an also important thing. After the revolt of 1857, there was a major change that was felt in the British India. Actually, the rule of this India Company was ended, and the rule of the Crown was directly established in India. And this is how there was a shift from the indirect rule of the Britishers to the direct rule of the Britishers in India. Is it okay? Now, what will happen, sir, ma'am? Though it was unsuccessful, the revolt proved exploitative nature of the company also. The first thing was that there was a shift in the power, that is from the East India Company to the Crown, and there was a direct rule of the Britishers established in India. Why this was? Because this revolt had exposed the real character of the East India Company or the Britishers in India. They were saying that they were here just to modernize the India. They were here for the welfare of the India. But the revolt of 1857 had exposed their reality. They exposed their reality, the true nature of the company, of the East India Company or the Britishers in India, right? And that's why, just to again improve their face, the East India Company's rule was ended, and the British Crown had taken the political power into its hand. It's okay. So direct rule or direct control of the Crown was established, replacing the East India Company. India was brought under the British Crown. British policy shifted from trade to direct political and military control of the East India Company, sir and madam. Now, so this was the thing, sir and madam. Now coming to some other aspect, right? What is another aspect, sir and madam? See, by 19th century, there were too many Taimani Indians who were Western educated, and they wanted to have some kind of the reformation in Indian society because there were too many vices or the evils that were prevailing in the Indian society at that time, like your sati, like widow remarriage, child infanticide, etc., etc. And Bengal was the center of all these activities, because there was a Bengali intelligentsia was looking for reformation in the Indian society. And the pioneer of this reformation was Raja Raman Roy. Raja Raman Roy, after the forceful sati of his bhavi, that is called sister-in-law, that is the wife of his elder brother, when she was forcefully made sati, his heart melted and he thought to bring some law, some legislation with the support of the Britishers to ban such inhuman activities, ban this human activity. And due to his efforts in 1829, the evil practice of the sati was banned by William Bentinck. So Raja Raman Roy is one such big name. Then if I talk about the Ishwarchandra Vidyasagar similarly done for the widow remarriage. Actually, during that time, the condition of the widows were very pathetic, and he was very felt for the petty condition of the widows, and therefore he fought or pioneered for the rights of the widows and brought them the right to remarry, And just because of his efforts, Hindu Widows Remarriage Act of 1856 was passed that legalized the widow remarriage. So that is again an important aspect, right, Susamam? Now coming to the Western India, it was in the Eastern India. Now coming to the Western India, if I come to the Western India, there are certain important names there, like M.G. Ranade and Dr. Atmaram Pandurang. They have established a Samaj that is called Pratna Samaj in 1867 in Bombay. This Samaj was meant to promote the women's education, that opposed child marriage, supported widow remarriage, and also fighting for the women's dependency. So they were now not only working for the women's right, but they were also doing for the empowerment of the women in India, right? So Mahadev Govindaranade and Dr. Atmaram Pandurang had established Pratna Samaj in 1867 in Bombay that promoted women's education, opposed child marriage, and supporting the widow remarriage and fighting women's dependency, right? Similarly, there is one big name again that is called Swami Dayananda Saraswati, who had founded the Arya Samaj in 1875, and he expressed his faith in the divine knowledge of the Vedas. Because if we talk about the early Vedic period, this period was very simple. It was free from the vices or any kind of a social practice, evil social practices. So he was looking for the revival of the Vedic society and the culture in the modern times, and that's why he had given a slogan that is called "Go back to the Vedas." Right? So Swami Dayananda Saraswati founded the Arya Samaj in 1875, and he had expressed his faith in the divine knowledge of the Vedas and gave the slogan "Go back to the Vedas." One of his disciples was disciple of Ramakrishna Paramhans was Swami Dayananda Saraswati. He had represented India in the World Parliament of the Religion in 1893 at Chicago and introduced Hinduism and Vedanta to the Western world. His speech was praised by the New York Herald. That is an important fact. Just please keep it with yourself. So see, this kind of the reformation was not only limited to the Hindu society or the Hindu intelligentsia class. Rather, it was also felt in Islam or with the Muslim intelligentsia. One such name is Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan had founded Mohammedan Anglo College in 1875 at the Aligarh, which later evolved into the Aligarh Muslim University in 1920. What was the objective of this college or this university? It aimed to modernize the Muslim society through the Western education while retaining the Islamic moral values, and also laid emphasis on Hindu-Muslim unity. So this was the objective, right? So we have seen that in the 19th century, the Indian society was looking for some kind of the reformation with the assistance of, largely with the assistance of the Britishers through legislations. Now, so this was your socialist movement as well. Now coming to the emergence of Indian nationalism and political movement also, right? See, sir and madam, see here. See, in 1885, if I talk about 1885, in 1885, the first national political platform, first political platform on pan-India level, first political platform on pan-India level was established, and this was your Indian National Congress. So with the establishment of the Indian National Congress, the nationalism started consolidating, or the national spirit was consolidating. Right? So in fact, in the true sense, the nationalism was felt in India during the British rule was with the Indian National Congress in some institutional form or some organized form. Even though we had nationalism and there are some kind of a national spirit even before that, but this was very scattered. This was not organized. It was not institutionalized. But with the formation of the Indian National Congress, the national spirit and the nationalism was now consolidated, right? And under the aegis of the Indian National Congress, three important centers of the national movement or nationalism movement was established or developed. One was in your Bengal, other was in your Punjab, and then was in your Maharashtra, right? So the three important centers of the nationalism was your Bengal, then was your Maharashtra, and then there was your Punjab. The three important centers of the nationalism. Strong centers of nationalism, right? Nationalism. Is it okay? Are you getting my points? So after under the aegis of the Congress, it's National Congress. Three important centers of the national spirit or nationalism evolved. That is your Bengal, Maharashtra, and the Punjab. Right? In the Bengal, if I talk about the Bengal, the Hindu-Muslim unity, there was a strong Hindu-Muslim unity. Unity of the Hindus and the Muslim was highest, right? So now, actually in Bengal, Bengali nationalism was taking the shape of Indian nationalism, right? Nationalism was taking the shape of the Indian nationalism. And this was a direct threat. This was a direct threat to the British government in India. Is it okay? In India. So this was a direct threat to the British government in India. Is it fine? Is it okay? Now, so what will happen? So obviously there was a reaction and there was a response. Reactionary response by the Britishers, to weaken weaken the nationalist spirit in Bengal, in Bengal, and that's why they have taken the decision to partition the Bengal, and the partition of the Bengal took place. Partition of Bengal took place. Bengal took place. Right? Took place to divide Hindu and the Muslims. Are you getting my points? So in 1905, after 1885, in 1905, the partition of Bengal had taken place. Not this much only, right? This much only. Why this much only? In 1906, the Muslim League was also formed. All India Muslim League was formed with the inspiration or the encouragement of the British East India Company. They branded Congress as a Hindu organization by this time. They said that within the Congress, the interests of the Muslims cannot be catered, cannot be protected. So if the Muslims wanted to have their right and their interests to be protected, then they should have their own political organization. And that's why in 1906, Muslim League was formed. Not this much only. In 1909, 1907, there is one more development that we can understand, that is called the Surat split. Because in this split, we can see the ideological difference led to the dissentment, or led to the decline within the Congress. In fact, the Congress on the ideological lines was divided into the two groups, moderate group and the extremist group, right? The moderate and the extremist group. Now, keeping it right over here, in 1909, Britishers committed, or they promised, not committed, but rather promised to the Muslims to protect their political rights through separate electorate system. To the Muslims. Is it okay? To the Muslims. Is it fine? It was resented. In reaction to this, the partition of the Bengal, Swadeshi movement was launched. Partition of Bengal, and Swadeshi movement in reaction was launched. Right? Launched. Since our opposition was very strong, so by 1911, the partition of Bengal was annulled. Partition of Bengal was annulled. It's okay, was annulled. And in 1911 itself, it was decided to transfer the capital of India from Calcutta to Delhi. And in 1911 itself, it was decided to transfer or shift the capital of Bengal, capital of India, to Delhi, to New Delhi, right, sir, madam? So this was the development. Right? Now, coming to some other developments. If we have seen that 1911, if we come to the another timeline, then we can see here one more thing. So taking you to the PPT, so nothing to worry about, everything is here. So here you can see December 1906, Muslim League was founded. 1907, Surat, there was a split into the Congress, Surat session. 1919, parliamentary reforms, separate electorate system was introduced and all, right, sir, madam? Now the Surat session and all, everything. Now see here, cancellation of the Bengal Partition, 1911. Now World War I saw Congress moderates supporting the Britain, expecting self-rule in India. Now see what will happen, sirs and madam. So in 1914, the First World War was started. That continued till 1918. Congress moderates supporting the Britain, expecting self-rule in India, right? Since 1914, there was a time when the British were looking for the cooperation from the sides of the Indians, and the moderate, who were very close to the Britishers, and they were believing in the British justice and the British rule, they were cooperating with the Britishers, right? In the hope that after the conclusion of this war, they will ensure us the self-rule. Now, this was the one development that we can understand. Now, in between, there is a one more event that had taken place during this World War itself, 1916 or 1915 also. In 1915, Mahatma Gandhi came to India, returned to India from South Africa. Is it okay? So, sir, madam, so see, there are some, again, major developments. 1915, Gandhi returned to 1915. Gandhi returned to India. Gandhi returned to India. And what he did? Yeah, Pan-India tour. He started Pan-India tour to understand. Pan-India tour he had started to understand the condition of India, to understand the real condition of India and the Indians, real condition of India and Indians. Is it okay? He had established Sabarmati Ashram, established Sabarmati Ashram for his political activities, right, sirs and madam? Activities, etc. If I come into the very next year, 1916, then there was a Lucknow session, and there was a Lucknow Pact as well. Lucknow Pact, right, sister madam? In this session of the Congress, that is in 1916, now what will happen? Again, there was a reunion of the Congress. So in this session, there was a reunion of the Congress. After the incident of 1907, when the Congress was split into two parts, right? Extremists and the moderate factions. In the Lucknow Pact, again, with the formation of the Muslim League, there was a distance between the Muslim League and the Muslims and the Hindus, the Muslim League and the Congress, right? Because the Congress was branded as a Hindu organization. It was there, that we have already discussed, right? So now if I come to this Lucknow Pact, there was a reunion of the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League. ML stands for the Muslim League. INC stands for your Indian National Congress. Is it okay? So this was the development, sirs and madam, that we have also written over here, sirs and madam, right? So 1916, what will happen? Lucknow session, reunited moderates and the extremists, and forced the Lucknow Pact between the Congress and the Muslim League that we have discussed, right? Now, again, during the war, what will happen? There are two important names, that is called Annie Besant, who was an Irish lady, and then Bal Gangadhar Tilak. They have launched a Home Rule League movement in 1916 to demand for self-government. So now you can also write here in 1916. 1916 itself, there is two developments that we can write, 1916, and again here in 1916. 1916. Is it okay, sirs and madam? 1916. Again, Home Rule League movement was started. 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 Movement was started by Annie Besant and Tilak, right? Is it okay? Annie Besant and Bal Gangadhar Tilak had launched the Tilak and the Besant had had started the Home Rule League movement 1916 to for the self-government, right, within the British Empire. But the movement was later suspended after the British government promised to grant Home Rule League, Home Rule. But the 1919 India Council Act of the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms did not fulfill the promise of the Home Rule League or self-government, which disappointed the Congress leaders. Bal Gangadhar Tilak described the reform as a morning without dawn. So this was what they have promised, that in the next constitutional reforms, Britishers will grant or give home rule right to the self-determination to the Indians. But what happened with the next constitutional reform, that is known as the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms or the India Council Act 1919? It was just a misnomer. There was nothing as it was promised towards the self-government given to the Indians. So it was a very disappointment for the Indians, and when Bal Gangadhar Tilak had very aptly described the reform as a morning without the dawn. Is it okay? Morning without a dawn. So you can write here the developments of 1919. That is your 1919. Is it okay, sirs and madam? 1919. So this was a year of Montagu-Chelmsford reforms. Montagu-Chelmsford reforms. Montagu-Chelmsford reforms. Montagu-Chelmsford reforms. Is it okay? Is it okay? In 1919. This is done. Now, sir, ma'am, in between there are two major developments also that had taken place. That is called Gandhian regional movements, Champaran, Ahmedabad, and the Khera. So in between this period, there are three Gandhian regional movements that had taken place, right? So in this period, when the Gandhi was making the tour of the India to understand the condition of the India and the Indians, so he had got the opportunity to lead the three regional movements, and one was your Champaran, then was Ahmedabad, and then your Khera. So in between, there was a three regional movements of the Gandhi, 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 movements of the Gandhi, right? And they were in sequence: Champaran, Ahmedabad, and Khera. Champaran, Ahmedabad, and Khera. Is it okay? In Khera, right? In India, it was the first non-cooperation movement of Gandhi, and it was the first satyagraha. It was the first satyagraha of Gandhi, first experiment of satyagraha of Gandhi in India, right? In India. So there are three regional movements that had already taken place in between these places: Champaran, Ahmedabad, and the Khera. This is a sequence also. So you may write CAK, Champaran, Ahmedabad, and then is your Khera. So these were the movements of the Gandhi. Is it okay, sir, madam? So right. So these were the first use of the Satyagraha, then Ahmedabad, then Khera, 1917 and 18, right? So you may write here also 1917 and 18. So this was in 1917, this was in 1918, and this was again in 1918. So this was the movement now, sirs and madam. So taking you to the PPT now. So these movements actually made the Gandhi. Nobody was knowing Gandhi. Gandhi was not popular. He was not a popular figure. Nobody was knowing his activities or his successes in the South Africa. It was only the intellectual classes or the upper class of the society or the educated Indians were knowing about the Gandhi, what the Gandhi is and what his ideology is. But in India, Gandhi was Mr. Gandhi. He was not Gandhiji, he was Mr. Gandhi. So that's why he had taken the pain to make a tour of the entire India, to establish his connect with the Indians, to understand their actual problem so that he could become a voice for these Indians, right? So after the success of these three regional movements, Champaran, Ahmedabad, and the Khera, Gandhi became actually the national hero, and he became the Gandhiji. He became Gandhiji, right? In between these developments, there was an act which was passed by the Britishers, that is known as the Rowlatt Act in 1919. Under this act, there was a provision of what? Detention without the trial. So it was very inhuman law. Gandhiji opposed this act and decided to start a satyagraha against this act. But before the launch of the satyagraha, Jallianwala Bagh massacre had taken place on 13th April 1919. 13th April 1919. Actually, the people of the Punjab in Amritsar, they gathered together for a peaceful protest of the arrest of Saifuddin Kichlu. They were now under this the Rowlatt Act. Then the General Dyer of the Punjab have opened fire without giving sufficient time to the people to come out of a garden of Jallianwala Bagh, and he killed thousands of the people, thousands of the satyagrahis, thousands of the people, and wounded again thousands of the people. That killed thousands of the people, killing thousands and wounding many. Is it okay? Now, against this massacre, the reactions from the Indians came to the fore. Rabindranath Tagore had returned the title of knighthood, which was given to him by the Britishers. Gandhi also launched a non-cooperation movement, and the movement was meant to boycott the government schools, foreign goods, titles, and promoting the Indian-made khadi. In 1922, a violent incident took place at Chauri Chaura, where protesters burned a police station that led Gandhi to call off the movement due to the commitment to non-violence. It's okay. So we have seen here there are too many events that had taken place that you can write here in 1919 itself. Then there was Rowlatt Act, Jallianwala Bagh massacre, Jallianwala Bagh massacre. In 1920, there was the non-cooperation movement started. 1922, this was the suspension of the non-cooperation movement. Suspension of the non-cooperation movement, just because of the incident of the Chauri Chaura. Is it okay? So this was the thing, sir, madam, right? So now what will happen, right? So let me discuss all these things, sir, madam. Chauri Chaura, right? After the suspension of the non-cooperation movement in 1922, Indian national movement entered a phase of political uncertainty and introspection. Why? Actually, there were two groups. Number one, youth had given a huge support to the Gandhi in the high hopes that Gandhi will do something against the Britishers. But just because of the small incident of the Chauri Chaura, when the Gandhi had called off the national cooperation movement, it was a tragic end of the non-cooperation, a tragic end of our national movement, which was not appealing to the youth. So youth now again baffled, and they were now confused under the leadership of the Gandhi, and they have decided to take their own course rather than to be under the Gandhi. This is one thing, right? After the suspension of the non-cooperation movement, there was a faction of the Congress, within the Congress, that they wanted to continue with the non-cooperation, and they decided to take part in the elections to non-cooperate with the government from within the government. And this group was known as the Swarajist group, because they have formed the Swaraj Party. So now you can see here, Mahatma Gandhi in prison, Congress leaders debated the future course of the struggle, whether to continue mass agitation or adopt constitutional method, because after this incident, Gandhiji was arrested also. This led to a temporary lull in the national movement, and a search for alternative strategies to sustain the political momentum was there. During this phase, Swaraj Party, led by C.R. Das and Motilal Nehru, right, they decided to enter the Legislative Council to non-cooperate with the government from within the government. Swarajists achieved some tactical successes, internal constraints, British obstructions, and the limited scope of the council reduced their long-term impact. Parallelly, constructive program under Gandhi guidance continued focusing on social reform, khadi, and the grassroots mobilization. So there are three things, sirs and madam, that has happened. One, the youth, now they have taken the course of revolutionary action. Gandhi went for the constructive program, and then there was a group of the Swarajist who formed their political party, and political party that is called the Swarajya Party by C.R. Das and the Motilal Nehru. They have elected the legislative council's elections. They have participated in the election of the legislative council, and they started non-cooperating with the government from within the government. Right? So these three things were happening together, right? Now, so what will happen next, sirs and madam? The mid-1920s also witnessed a rise in the revolutionary nationalism and youth radicalism driven by frustration with the constitutional politics that we have already discussed. Now, there was economic distress, peasant unrest, labor strikes, and repressive colonial policies further deepened the social discontent, right? In this condition and scenario, there was a need of, again, the constitutional reforms to give some concessions and some rights to the Indians, right? An India Council Act 1919 was to be reviewed in 1929 after 10 years. But before that, in 1927, Simon Commission was appointed to review the provisions of India Council Act 1919, right? See here. I'm going to give you something, sirs and madam. So see, there was a discontent. Now you could understand discontent in India, right? And and people wanted some constitutional reforms, right? This is the one of the development, right? Again, there was a provision in India Council Act 1919. India Council Act 1919, there was a provision. It was to be reviewed. It was to be reviewed after 10 years. After 10 years in 1929. But in Britain, there was a rule of the two political parties. There is a two-party rule in Britain. One is your Conservative Party, and there is your Labour Party, right? Labour Party. At this time, the Conservative Party was in the power, and it was completely against the India and the Indians, whereas the Labour Party was a little bit considerate about the Indians. And there was an election, general election was supposed to be conducted, and in this election, Conservative Party was apprehensive to lose the power. So obviously, Labour Party would come in the power. And since Labour Party was a little bit considerate about the Indians, so it was the apprehension of the Conservative Party that it may give some extra political concessions to the Indians. Is it okay? To the Indians. That's why the British government had appointed Simon Commission to review the India Council Act 1919 before time in 1927. So the Simon Commission was constituted before its time, 2 years before its time. Okay, right? Are you getting my points? So now Simon Commission was appointed. Simon Commission was appointed in 1927 to review the India Council Act 1919. But when Simon Commission came to India, it was now opposed. It was opposed by the Indians. Why it was opposed by the Indians, sirs and madam? Why it was opposed? Actually, it was completely Whitesman Commission. It was opposed. It was completely Whitesman Commission. Completely Whiteman's Commission. Whiteman Commission. There was no representation of Indians. No representative of Indians. No representation of Indians. Was there. No representation of Indians was there, right? So the intention of the Simon Commission was doubted, and there was a reaction, or there was opposition, and this opposition was through go back Simon. Then there was a Secretary of State, Lord Birkenhead, who had challenged the Indians to frame their own constitution, that is called constitutional reform, but allow on request on us, the Indians, to continue the Simon Commission to do its job. If you are not satisfied, then you can come up with your own report, before the Britishers. This challenge was accepted by the Congress. So accepted by the Congress. In 1919, this India Council Act was also reviewed by Congress under the leadership of Pandit Motilal Nehru. Motilal Nehru had given a date, 31st December 1930, and the goal was, had given the Swashasana, objective of Swashasana, that is called self-rule given to the Indians, and this was to be given by 31st December 1930. So Pandit Motilal Nehru had made a report that is called Nehru Report. In this report, he had set the goal of self-rule to be achieved by 1930. When he was in the process of framing this report, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru and his friend Subhash Chandra Bose, S.C. Bose, approached to the Nehru, and in fact Pandit Motilal Nehru, and said that this time period is quite long for what? For waiting for the self-rule. So on their insistence, this date was preponed to 1929, right? And this Motilal Nehru report was made in 1928, right? Is it okay? Very next year in 1929, Indian National Congress met its Lahore session, and in this session was presided by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, and by the midnight of 31st December 1929 at Lahore, Jawaharlal Nehru was, in fact, till midnight of 31st December 1929, Jawaharlal Nehru was waiting for the declaration of self-rule by the Britishers, but when they have not done anything, they have not declared or announced the self-rule, then at the midnight of 31st December 1929, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru now gave the call for Swarajya. Swarajya means, that is called complete independence. Now he said that we Indians will not compromise anything less than the complete independence. Now, at any cost, we would like to have the complete independence. What is the difference between this self-rule, that is called Sushasana, and the Swarajya? Sushasana simply means that we want to have political autonomy under the British regime. But if we talk about the complete independence or the Purna Swaraj or the Swaraj, it simply means that we wanted to have our political control, political independence completely, and we are not going to accept the Britishers in any form. So this was our objective, right? And this day was celebrated as the first Independence Day on 26 January 1930. Right? Are you getting my points? So this day of the Swarajya Day was celebrated on the 26th January 1930. On the other hand, this India Council Act 1919 was reviewed by Simon Commission, and Simon Commission had produced its report in London. And on this report, roundtable conference was organized. First, second, and the third roundtable conference was organized. In this Congress, in this roundtable conference, in fact, this roundtable conference was all-party meeting. It was all-party meeting. But in this meeting, the roundtable conference, in the very first roundtable conference, but in first roundtable conference, Congress, that is called INC, was not present. Which was the largest political party not present, which was the largest political party in India, Is it okay? Is it fine? On the other hand, On the other hand, Mahatma Gandhi had already started the non-cooperation movement with its Dandi Yatra, which was Salt Satyagraha, right? Salt Satyagraha, right? So Gandhi was busy in what that is called civil disobedience movement after its constructive program. Here in London, there was a roundtable conference which was supposed to be the all-party meeting, but this conference was without the presence of the Congress. So in between 1931, Gandhi-Irvine Pact had taken place in 1931. In 1931, Gandhi-Irvine Pact took place. Gandhi-Irvine Pact took place. Gandhi-Irvine Pact took place, under which Gandhi was supposed to suspend the civil disobedience movement on the promise that the political prisoners will be freed, right? And Gandhi will attend the second roundtable conference. In the first, there was no Congress representation, nor in the third one. In the second roundtable conference, Gandhi was present. He was represented. By the Congress. So roundtable conference was there, right? But here on the issue of the Communal Award, Gandhi left this meeting and came back to India and again restarted the civil disobedience movement. When he had restarted the civil disobedience movement, Gandhi was arrested. Whereas in all the three roundtable conference, 1, 2, and 3, Dr. Ambedkar was participating. And Ambedkar was looking for the Communal Award for the the depressed class of the society. So after the third roundtable conference in 1932, Ambedkar agreed for Communal Award, and when he came to India, Gandhi was in jail after the civil disobedience movement, relaunch of the civil disobedience movement. Gandhi was in shock and he went on hunger strike. Then just because of this hunger strike, there was a pact between Ambedkar and the Gandhi that is known as the Pune Pact in 1932, by which Ambedkar left the idea of the Communal Award, and Gandhi had started the Harijan upliftment program through Harijan Yatra and giving reservation to the Harijans. Harijan means that is called the people of the Hari, that is called the God, and it is used for that is a term used for the depressed class. Is that okay? So after that, Harijan Yatra and Harijan program was started by the Gandhi. So this is what we have discussed, sir and madam, till here. That's okay. So civil disobedience movement was there. Pune Pact between the Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar reserved seats for Dalits but rejected separate electorate system. The civil disobedience movement was finally withdrawn in 1934. Gandhi resigned from Congress but continued social work, right? Is it okay? Is it fine? On the other hand, there is one more development that we can see here, and this development was, you can see post-war developments in the Gandhian era. Other hand, there was an ideological division within the Congress. Okay, within the Congress. This was a Gandhian age that was going on. On the other hand, there was ideological division within the Congress that was growing sharper just because of the emergence of socialist and the left-wing ideas that were challenging the moderate approaches of the Gandhi. In this backdrop, we can see the emergence of Subhash Chandra Bose. Subhash Chandra Bose was a dynamic and radical leader advocating a strong central state, socialist economic planning, and a more militant approach to imperialism, right? So what happened? Bose was elected Congress president in 1938 and again in 1939. That symbolized this ideological shift and the growing appeal of the radical nationalism among the youth, right? Gandhi in 1939 did not want to have Subhash Chandra Bose as a re-elected president. Rather, he wanted to have Patabi Sitaramaiah. But the Gandhi's candidate was defeated in the 1939 Congress president's election that led to the difference between the Gandhi and the Subhash Chandra Bose. As a result, Subhash Chandra Bose resigned from the Congress and established its own political organization that is known as a Forward Bloc in 1939. Forward Bloc 1939. Thus, the period from 1922 to 1939 marked a transition from post-non-cooperation experimentation to ideological radicalization, setting the stage for new forms of nationalist struggle under the leaders like Subhash Chandra Bose. So now what will happen? When the Gandhi left, Gandhi Bose left the Congress. Bose now seek the help of the Japan during the Second World War and formed Indian National Army (INA) with the ex-Indian soldiers to fight against the Britishers from the Northeast India. Right? INA fought from ex-Indian soldiers. INA fought alongside Japanese forces in battles at Imphal and Kohima. Although militarily unsuccessful, the INA's moral victory was significant. After atomic bomb attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan surrendered during the Second World War, and this was also the jolt for the INA activities. INA leaders were arrested and tried at the Red Fort that ignited the nationwide protests. Bose finally died mysteriously in a plane crash in Taiwan in August 1945. On the other hand, now we should look into the communalism that we understood, Gandhian era. Then we see the emergence of socialist ideology in the Congress and this Subhash Chandra Bose activity. Now there is one more thing that we need to understand, that is the growth of the communalism and finally the partition of India in 1947. So that is another aspect. Rise of communalism and the demand for Pakistan. See, the British policy of divide and rule began with separate electorate system given to the Muslims in 1909, encouraged political mobilization along the religious lines. Over time, identity-based politics hardened due to fears of the domination. Right? By 1930s, Muhammad Ali Jinnah now was very much in favor of two-nation theory. Very much in favor of two-nation theory, because he believed that Hindu and Muslims in British India were the two distinct nations. They cannot live together because they have the separate cultures, religions, and political interest. Right? Political interest that necessitated a separate homeland for the Muslims to secure their identity and the rights, which culminated in the creation of the Pakistan in 1947. League formally demanded independent states for Muslims in Western India and Eastern India through Lahore Session 1940. So by 1940, it was almost decided that Hindu and Muslim cannot live together as a nation in India, and Pakistan became a reality. British reliance on the League during the wartime, negotiations strengthened its bargaining capacity and the power. So Muslim League was now very much strong in its demand during the Second World War that started in 1939 and continued till 1945. So this was another aspect, sirs and madam. Now coming to the political developments during the Second World War, sirs and madam. See what happened during the Second World War. To secure the support of the Indians in the war, Britishers sent several missions and the plans. And one such mission was Cripps mission in 1942, that promised dominion status after the war, but also allowed provinces to opt out, indirectly supporting the Pakistan demand. Gandhi rejected it at post-dated check on a bankrupt bank because it talked about the dominion state that is called the self-rule. But by 1939, it was already decided that now the objective of the national movement is to secure the Swaraj. We are not going to compromise anything less than that. That's why Gandhi said that it is a post-dated check on a bankrupt bank. The Quit India movement was launched on 8th August 1942 with Gandhi's slogan, "Do or die." So this was the climax of the national movement. The national movement. British arrested key leaders including Gandhi, Nehru, and Patel with the announcement of the Quit India movement. A nationwide protest started, and you will be surprised to know that during this movement, it was the common people of India that led this movement at their own, and this is the movement that is never taken back. Now next, Lord Revolt became the viceroy in October 1943, released the Congress leaders, and proposed the Revolt Plan in 1945. But the Revolt Plan and Simla Conference of 1945 failed due to the Congress League deadlock. Then the Cabinet Mission Plan 1946 was sent that proposed a federal structure. Interim government formed in 1946 that led to the partition and independence finally in 1947. See, the final step towards the independence and partition. In February 1947, the Prime Minister of Britain was Clement Attlee. And the British government announced that in House of Commons that now the power would be transferred to the Indians by June 1948. Lord Mountbatten became viceroy and proposed the partition of India into India and Pakistan on 3rd June 1947. Power transfer was advanced to August 15, 1947. On 15th August 1947, India gained independence after nearly 200 years of the British colonial rule. This is how the independence was secured. I believe you must have enjoyed this session and it would be very helpful for you to revise the things in a very quicker manner. Thank you very much. God bless you guys. Thank you. See you in the next sessions. Bye-bye.